£6, 7 items, one shop. That's a complete emergency food and sanitation foundation that outperforms kits costing 10 times more. And I know that sounds like nonsense because you've been told your whole life that emergency preparedness means specialist shops, freeze-dried meal pouches, and a spare room full of gear you'll never touch. It doesn't. Most of what you actually need is sitting on a supermarket shelf right now, ignored by everyone walking past it. One item on this list contains over 8,000 calories, costs barely more than £1, and has a secondary use most people would never consider. Shelves empty in 72 hours. The fuel protests proved it. COVID proved it. You're either ahead of that window or you're fighting for scraps. Here's what you're buying. Everything comes from Lidl. Every price is what you'll pay today. Every calorie count is verified. And by the end of this, you'll have a single carrier bag that keeps you fed, hydrated, and sanitary while your neighbors are queuing for emergency rations they haven't figured out how to cook. Bell-Bake plain flour, 1.5 kilogram bag. 65 pence. Most people walk straight past this. It's a baking ingredient to them. Something you buy when you're making a cake. That's because most people have never had to think about calories as currency. This bag contains 5,250 calories. That's more than a full day's intake for an adult male, sitting in a paper bag for 65 pence. Let me put that in perspective. A single freeze-dried emergency meal pouch costs £5 to £12 and delivers maybe 400 to 600 calories. You'd need 8 or 9 of those pouches to match what this bag of flour gives you. That's £40 to £100 versus 65 pence. The maths isn't even close. Flour delivers approximately 350 calories per 100 grams. That's raw energy in a shelf-stable form that stores for 12 months in a cool, dry cupboard. British Army 24-hour operational ration packs are built around 4,000 calories per day. This single bag gets you past that threshold on its own. But here's what most people miss. Flour isn't just flour, it's flatbread when you mix it with water and cook it on any heat source. It's a soup thickener that turns thin broth into something that actually sustains you. It's a sauce base. It's a caloric extender that stretches protein dishes further. In extremis, it's a wound drying agent. One item, 5 functions. That's specification-grade thinking, not buying things for what they are, buying them for what they do. While others are filling trolleys with 20 different items in small quantities, you're deep stacking. Military ration pack philosophy prioritizes consistent caloric intake from reliable sources. Variety is a luxury. Calories are survival. And flour delivers approximately 8,077 calories per pound you spend on it. Find me a survival food brand that comes close to that efficiency ratio. Running total, 65 pence. That calorie-per-pence ratio on the flour is something I go into properly in a guide I've put together on emergency food logistics. First link in the description, worth printing off while you've still got a connection. Harvest basket red lentils, 500 grams, 45 pence. Protein is where most budget stockpiles fall apart. People buy cheap carbs and forget that your body can't rebuild tissue, fight infection, or maintain muscle on flour alone. Lentils fix that problem at a price point that makes dedicated protein supplements look like a joke. 350 calories per 100 grams. 17 grams of protein per 100 grams. That's military-grade field nutrition at civilian prices. A 500-gram bag gives you 85 grams of protein. A comparable whey protein supplement costs £15 to £20 and won't survive 3 years on a shelf without refrigeration. Red lentils cook in 15 to 20 minutes with nothing but water and heat. No soaking required, no preparation, no specialist equipment. That matters when your cooker runs on electricity and the power's been out for 2 days. A camping stove, a saucepan, water, lentils. That's a complete protein meal. But the real advantage is scaling. 10 kilograms of red lentils costs about £11 from Lidl. That covers supplementary protein for 2 adults across several weeks. Find me a protein source at that price point with that shelf life. You won't, because it doesn't exist outside of bulk grain supply. Most civilian preppers buy tinned meat, corned beef, tinned chicken, Spam. Those cost £1.50 to £3 per tin, deliver fewer calories per gram, and weigh significantly more per calorie. Lentils beat them on every metric that matters in a disruption. Cost per calorie, weight per calorie, shelf life, preparation simplicity, storage density. You combine the flour and the lentils. You've got a complete flatbread with protein, dal and chapati. It's fed armies and civilizations for thousands of years. It works because it covers your macronutrient bases with 2 ingredients that cost a combined £1.10. Running total, £1.10, Meadow Fresh UHT whole milk, 1 litre, 75 pence. This is your complete nutrition backup. UHT whole milk requires 0 preparation. You open it, you drink it. You've consumed calories, protein, fat, calcium, and vitamins A and D. No cooking, no water, no heat source, nothing. That matters more than people realize. Every other item on this list needs some form of preparation: water, heat, a pan, time. There are scenarios where you have none of those. Power cut in the middle of January. No gas, no electricity. You're cold, you're tired, and you need calories now. UHT milk delivers them without asking anything of you. 1 litre of whole milk gives you approximately 630 calories. It contains around 33 grams of protein and 35 grams of fat. It stores at room temperature unopened for 6 to 9 months. Once opened, you treat it like fresh milk. But unopened, it just sits on your shelf waiting. The civilian mistake here is buying bottled water in bulk and assuming that covers your hydration needs. Water keeps you hydrated, it doesn't keep you fed. UHT milk does both. It's a food source that happens to be a liquid. That distinction matters when you're rationing solid food. For children and elderly household members, this is arguably the most important item on the list. Getting calories into someone who's stressed, frightened, or unwell is difficult with solid food. A glass of milk bypasses that problem entirely. No chewing, no cooking, no negotiation. Running total, £1.85. Carnier stock cubes, 10 cubes per box, 25 pence. Morale, it's the thing every amateur stockpiler ignores and every military logistics chain prioritizes. British Army doctrine doesn't include tea and coffee in ration packs because soldiers need caffeine. It includes them because morale collapse kills operational effectiveness faster than hunger does. Stock cubes are the cheapest morale multiplier on any shelf. 1 cube dissolved in 200 milliliters of boiling water gives you a warm, salty broth that tastes like food. That psychological effect is worth more than its caloric value. And its caloric value isn't nothing. Each cube contains sodium, which your body needs, especially if you're stressed, cold, or exerting yourself. Warm liquid in cold conditions changes your physiological state. It raises core temperature perception, it calms the nervous system, it creates a psychological sense of normalcy that prevents the kind of panic-driven decision-making that gets people into trouble during disruptions. But stock cubes aren't just broth. Dissolve 1 into your lentil pot, and you've transformed bland survival food into something your family will actually eat. Crush 1 into your flour and water flatbread dough. Suddenly, it's flavored. That's the difference between a household that maintains caloric intake through a week-long disruption and one that starts skipping meals on day 3 because the food is unbearable. Most people assume they'll just eat whatever's available when the time comes. They won't. Taste fatigue is a documented phenomenon in prolonged emergency feeding. Within 4 days, people voluntarily reduce caloric intake because the food is monotonous and unpleasant. Stock cubes prevent that. 25 pence prevents that. And here's the detail most people miss entirely. Stock cubes function as an improvised electrolyte replacement. Sodium and potassium in warm water. It's not a clinical rehydration solution, but when you don't have sachets of diaurolite, it keeps you functional. 1 box, 10 cubes, 25 pence. 4 functions. Running total, £2.10. Now stop. Look at that number, £2.10. You've got flour delivering over 5,000 calories, lentils delivering complete protein, UHT milk requiring 0 preparation, and a morale multiplier that makes all of it edible long term. 4 items under £2.50, and you haven't even hit the second half of this list. This is where most people get emergency preparation catastrophically wrong. They buy 50 items in small quantities, a tin of this, a packet of that, 3 of these. It looks impressive laid out on a table. It photographs well for social media. And it falls apart within a week because they've built a collection, not a supply chain. A household with 50 tins but no cooking fuel, no lighting and no sanitation has a cupboard display. Within 4 days, taste fatigue and morale collapse reduce their caloric intake voluntarily. Within 7 days, poor sanitation creates infection risk that no amount of tinned food addresses. They haven't prepared, they've gone shopping. Deep stacking beats variety stacking every single time. That's not opinion. That's British military logistics doctrine applied to a household context. Consistent caloric intake from reliable sources outperforms a buffet of items that run out unpredictably. Bellbake porridge oats, 1 kilogram. 75 pence. There's a reason oats have fueled armies for centuries. Scottish regiments carried oats as a primary field ration long before anyone invented the word superfood. The reason is simple. Oats deliver sustained energy release over hours, not minutes. 1 kilogram gives you approximately 3,600 calories. 75 pence. That's slow-release carbohydrate with decent fiber content and enough protein to be useful. Around 13 grams per 100 grams. But the real advantage of oats is preparation flexibility. Cold soak them overnight in UHT milk and you've got a no-cook breakfast. Boil them with water for 3 minutes and you've got porridge. Mix them into flatbread dough with the flour and you've added texture and sustained energy. Crush them and stir them into lentil broth for a thicker, more filling meal. The civilian mistake is buying breakfast cereal. Cornflakes, rice puffs, granola, those cost £2 to £4 per box, deliver fewer calories per gram, contain more sugar and less fiber, and crush into useless crumbs in any kind of bulk storage. Oats store in a sealed container for 12 to 18 months. They don't crush, they don't go stale, they just work. A 30-day supply of freeze-dried meals costs £150 to £360 from specialist survival retailers. The Lidl equivalent using flour, lentils, oats and oil costs under £30. That's not a marginal difference, that's an order of magnitude. The expensive version doesn't make you more prepared, it just makes you more comfortable on day 1. By day 5, you're eating the same bland calories either way. Except you've spent £300 more for the privilege. Running total, £2.85. Willow-thick bleach, 750 millilitres, 35 pence. This is the non-food item that outranks half your food supply, and almost nobody includes it in an emergency stockpile because they don't understand what actually kills people in disruptions. It's not starvation, not in a country with this much stored food in every household. It's waterborne disease, it's infection from poor sanitation. It's the secondary effects of waste collection stopping, water mains losing pressure, and surfaces going uncleaned for days on end. The WHO-endorsed protocol for emergency water purification is 2 drops of unscented bleach per litre of water. Let it stand for 30 minutes. That's it. A 750 milliliter bottle of bleach purifies several hundred litres of drinking water. At 35 pence, that's your water security for weeks. But bleach isn't just water purification. Surface disinfection when you can't wash properly. Toilet sanitation when council waste collection stops, and it will stop. Because the trucks run on diesel and the drivers have their own families to worry about. Mold prevention in damp storage areas, which matters if you're keeping food in a garage or shed through winter. Historically, more people die from sanitation failure in disruptions than from lack of food. That's documented across every major infrastructure failure in the last century. The household that has calories but no sanitation ends up using those calories to fight infection instead of maintaining function. Most preppers build a food pile and assume the taps will keep running and the bins will keep being collected. The September 2000 fuel protests brought this country within 24 hours of activating emergency powers. Supermarket shelves emptied, petrol stations closed, and the thing nobody talks about is that waste collection and water treatment both rely on the same diesel supply chain. When fuel stops, everything downstream of it stops. 35 pence. That's what stands between you and the single biggest killer in any domestic disruption. And it's sat on a shelf in the cleaning aisle that nobody visits when they're panic buying. Running total, £3.20 now. Pay attention to this one. Castello sunflower oil, 1 litre, £1.30. This is the item I mentioned at the start. Over 8,000 calories, barely more than a pound, and a secondary use that most people would never consider. 1 litre of sunflower oil contains 8,280 calories. Read that number again. 8,280. That is more than 2 full days of calories for an adult male in a single bottle. Fat delivers 9 calories per gram versus 4 for carbohydrates or protein. That's not marketing. That's thermodynamics. The physics of energy density means fat is always the most efficient fuel source per unit of weight and volume. Royal Marine's cold weather doctrine prioritizes fat intake precisely because of this energy density. When you're burning 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day in cold conditions, you cannot physically eat enough carbohydrate to keep up. Fat bridges that gap. And sunflower oil is liquid fat in its purest, most shelf-stable form. A 1 litre bottle stores for 12 to 18 months sealed. It doesn't need refrigeration. It doesn't need preparation. Add a tablespoon to any meal and you've boosted its caloric content by 120 calories without changing the volume. That's how you stretch a food supply. Not by adding more food, but by increasing the energy density of what you already have. Now here's where it gets interesting. Sunflower oil isn't just food. It's an improvised lamp fuel. A cotton wick in a shallow dish of sunflower oil burns for hours. Clean, steady light with no specialist equipment. When the power's out and your torch batteries are dead, that bottle becomes your light source. It's skin conditioning in cold weather. Cracked, dry skin in freezing conditions isn't cosmetic. It's an infection entry point. A thin layer of oil prevents cracking. Military field medics carry petroleum jelly for the same reason. Sunflower oil does the same job. It's mechanical lubrication for stiff hinges, locks, and tools. It's food preservation through confit-style immersion, where you submerge cooked meat in oil to seal it from air and bacteria. 1 item, 5 functions, £1.30. While everyone else is fighting over the tinned beans and the pasta aisle, This bottle sits untouched in the cooking oil section because people don't think in calories per gram. They think in meals per tin, and that thinking costs them. The total calorie count across all 7 items in this list exceeds 20,000. The total cost is under £6. The total weight fits in a single carrier bag. Compare that to a £50 survival kit from any online retailer, and you'll find it delivers fewer usable calories, weighs more, and requires more preparation. The carrier bag wins on every metric. Running total, £4.50, and that's your final number. £4.50. 7 items, over 20,000 calories, protein coverage, fat coverage, carbohydrate coverage, sanitation and water purification, light source, morale maintenance. Every function covered by 7 items from one shop. September 2000, the fuel protests, supermarket shelves cleared in under 72 hours. The government came within a single day of activating emergency powers. COVID, March 2020, Lidl and Aldi imposed purchase limits only after key lines were already stripped. The Beast from the East, 2018. Rural and suburban stores sat bare for up to 5 days with no resupply. That 72-hour window isn't theoretical. It's documented. 3 times in 20 years, the people who had supplies weren't survivalists. They weren't preppers with bunkers and bug-out bags. They were people who'd spent 10 minutes in a supermarket buying exactly what you've just seen on this list. The difference between them and everyone else wasn't money. It wasn't knowledge. It was timing. They acted before the news cycle triggered the stampede. You're either ahead of that window or you're behind it. There is no middle ground. When the shelves empty, they empty everywhere, simultaneously, because panic buying follows news coverage with about a 6-hour delay. By the time you've seen the first headline and thought about going to the shop is already stripped. The people who queue for emergency rations on day 5 are not less intelligent than the people who prepared on day 1. They just acted later. That's the only variable. Speed of action. So here's what you do. You go to Lidl this week, not next month, not when something happens. This week, you buy these 7 items. You put them in a cupboard. You forget about them. Total cost, £4.50. Total time, 10 minutes. And if nothing ever happens, you've lost less than the price of a coffee. If something does happen, you've bought yourself a week of calories, clean water, light, and sanitation, while everyone around you is realizing they should have done the same thing. Most people will watch this and do nothing. That's fine. That's how it always works. The ones who act will have a carrier bag that keeps their household functional, while their neighbors discover that 50 tins of beans and no way to purify water isn't a plan. It's a slow-motion hygiene crisis with a side of toast fatigue. If you want the full picture on putting together emergency logistics properly, I've written everything up in a guide linked below. £4.50, 7 items, 1 carrier bag. What's the one item you'd add to this list?